As the climate crisis envelops our social discourse and communities battle with extreme weather events, the role of architecture as a culprit and a solution needs to be thoroughly considered. Today, architecture appears to be awash in a sea of global electronic media. The latest Australian houses are interchangeable with Norwegian or Brazilian. Boxes, contemporary barns, Hampton style, mid-century modern, screens, beach style, arches, slats, Carrara marble, pastel colours. These are all devoid of place, culture and environment. But business as usual is no longer an option, and sustainability must be our absolute priority. But technical sustainability is not enough. The world's highest uptake of rooftop solar in Western Australia hasn't slowed the destruction of the Banksia woodland, nor will mandated 7-star energy ratings do anything for the endangered black cockatoos. CO2 reduction is essential, but immediate and more achievable conservation is often forgotten by a population that has been disconnected from place. Solalo Springs is a technically sustainable house, but it is also about submersion in place, an architecture that promotes engagement with, a reverence for, and a motivation for the preservation of place. It is a small house, settled into a Western Australian garden. It is a veranda, a tent. The architecture is a collection of elements. Concrete sewer pipes, like obelisks, emerge from the ground. A suspended wooden veranda floor. A tent-like pyramid roof which appears to have been blown into place by the wind. And a brick mass at the rear anchoring the building into the hillside. This assembly of elements is devised to break down the formal definition of the building. Forms move past one another. Materials flow through glazing lines without breaks or frames. The definition of the building interior space is deliberately fraught. The main living spaces are all located under a single roof, without internal walls, using only dividers. It is arranged around a central wood-burning heater and under a skylight, a canopy of hanging vines. Plants spill from the obelisks. Landscape flows in and out. It is an open space, transparent to birdsong and frog call, where breezes flow and conversations occur between rooms. It's a life lived on a veranda. 80% of the site is returned to garden. All Western Australian plants, planted in specific gardens dedicated to bioregions, the Gascoyne, South Coast and the Swan River Plain. A permanent surface spring flows through a pond, down a waterfall, runs in a creek, under a bridge, and through to a small contained wetland. The garden provides different heights and complexity. It restores the canopy through tall eucalyptus species. The house is hand-built by the owners, their family and friends. A sense of ownership is shared amongst a small little community. The floor is Wandoo timber, recovered and recycled from the now demolished Subiaco Pavilion markets that I attended as a child. It retains the specks of paint from the old shop floors. The building elevation appears to take on the form of an original 1900s cottage from the area. The wooden floors sound hollow underfoot like a traditional Western Australian house used to, and the side is set with rocks collected from an uncle's farm in Wailabing. The architecture explores Western Australian themes. It looks at steel or iron, which is important to the Western Australian identity. It utilises rusted, structural, plated, and the stainless steel throughout the building. It also contemplates water. We are people who live on and for the water, but in a dry and drying climate. The water theme is captured in the gutterless roof, which sheets often in rainstorms. The ripples of the stainless steel fascia as you walk underneath. The stone garden bed raked into circles like drops of water in a pond. And the dancing light itself from the pond, which is reflected onto the ceiling. The spring, spout and stream. The sound of water. The glisten of the running creek. From a performance perspective, the house produces significantly more energy than it consumes. It uses a minimum 3 kilowatt solar system, but the energy positive outcome is really the product of an efficient and energy reducing architecture as opposed to strapping on an enormous solar system. Heating is provided through a central wood heater. The heater is complemented with an infrared reflectivity strategy which utilises low E glass and the aluminium composite ceiling to reflect heat energy throughout the entire house. On a cold winter's night in Perth, say a minimum of 4 degrees, the house can be kept at a comfortable temperature using only a single log for 24 hours. Unfortunately, Perth is experiencing increasing heat waves, and so cooling was necessary. The house uses a Sealy Climate Wizard indirect evaporative cooler. This system cools through a similar process as a traditional evaporative cooler, but instead of blowing cooled, wet air inside the house, it moves it through a heat exchanger and exhausts it. New dry air is brought back through the heat exchanger, cooled and blown into the house. This achieves lower temperatures than a traditional evap unit and supplies 100% fresh air into the house at all times. The cooler is set up in a displacement arrangement, where the cool air is delivered at ground level at low velocity and it builds up a big pillow of conditioned air. As the air heats, it rises and the hot stale air is exhausted through the apex roof vents. In this arrangement, on a 40-degree day, the system keeps the house at about 22 degrees using only 250 watts, which is the equivalent of 3 ceiling fans or a large LCD TV. Solalo Springs has been designed as a sustainable house, where the occupants are submerged in place. It does this through sustainability technology, but also through architectural composition. It allows life to be lived outdoors, amongst the unique environment of Western Australia. Its approach to sustainability is integral to every little part of the building.